Welcome to the GTAC Tech Talk webinar on Sharp Camera Integration in Security Center. My name is Derek. I am a technical support representative with Genetec and will be your host for today's webinar. We also have other members of the Genetec Technical Assistance Center standing by to answer your questions during the webinar. Just type your question in the GoToMeeting console and someone will get back to you with an answer shortly. If there are any answers that we cannot get to in the time allotted today, we'll be sure to send you an email with the answer. The questions and answers from today's webinar will be posted in the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal forum under the GTAC Tech Talk section. If you think of any question that relates to today's webinar, you can also post it in the forum and someone will get back to you with an answer. As with our previous GTAC Tech Talk webinars, we'll be posting a video of this webinar in our new videos section of the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal. Just log into the GTAP, go to Tools, click on Videos, and then go to the Webinars category on the left. From here you can either watch the video directly in your web browser, or you can download a zipped file of the video in WMV format. I'd like to take a minute to briefly go over the contents of today's webinar. First, we'll be starting with an overview of the Sharp camera system, what it does, and how it connects to other Genetec software. Since there's a lot of information to cover on the Sharp cameras, we'll be focusing on the integration of fixed Sharp cameras with Security Center today, and we'll cover other topics concerning the Sharp cameras in future webinars. Fixed cameras are mounted on poles or other permanent physical locations, as opposed to mobile cameras, which are vehicle mounted. Now, after the overview, we'll be taking about 40 minutes to cover the Sharp setup and configuration, the Security Center configuration, setting up our hot lists, some best practices for both the Sharp and Security Center system, and finally a brief section on the security desk and available documentation. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a section on frequently asked questions, which should take about 5 minutes. We're going to leave the webinar open for about another 10 minutes after that for any questions you may have. Now, as we'll be covering subjects on multiple systems, keep an eye on the top right corner of the screen. If we're doing something that relates to the Sharp camera, you'll see an icon of a Sharp. If we're working on the Security Center system, we'll have the Security Center logo up there. Before going into the details of setting up the Sharp cameras with the Security Center system, let's take a look at the big picture. The AutoView license plate recognition system can be used to automatically collect plates and feed this information to the Security Center system. This can be used to collect data for querying, real-time monitoring of vehicles, and instant notification if a vehicle matches one of the plates on a list of wanted vehicles. These lists are known as hot lists and can be configured within Security Center. We can also use hot lists to set up automatic access control rules for a gate or garage door. The benefits of using the AutoView LPR system with Security Center are high plate read rates, greater accuracy using the fuzzy matching feature, real-time monitoring and identification, ease of use as part of the Security Desk application, and minimal configuration. Some of the other advanced features of the AutoView system are the ability to use wildcards and hotlists to identify partial plate matches, and international plate reading support to be able to read many different plate sizes, types, and styles. The AutoView integration with the Security Center Unified Security Platform replaces the previous Omnicast AutoView plugin and provides added functionality and flexibility. If we take a look at our standard network diagram, we can see that the Sharp cameras are connected like any other IP device. There are two sets of information that are being sent from the Sharp cameras. The live feed from the camera is sent to the Omnicast system and can be viewed in Security Center as a camera attached to an integrated Omnicast system. The Sharp cameras also send information packets to Security Center. The information being sent to Security Center from the Sharp cameras can include the plate data, an image of the plate, as well as a general context image from when the read was taken. The AutoView LPR system is connected to the Security Center Unified System using the LPR Manager, which is added as part of the integration service. Now let's take a quick look at the Sharp cameras and get a few more details on them as well. The Sharp cameras are manufactured by Genetec and are our own proprietary hardware. Since they're made by us, we can provide various lenses and illumination types to meet every customer's needs. The units are running on Windows XP Embedded, so all the license plate recognition processing is being done on the edge. The Sharp cameras are IP-based, so they can easily be connected to any network, which allows information to be sent rapidly to anyone who needs it. Now, since everything is contained in one box, the cameras are easy to set up and maintain. Now that we have an overall view of what we're setting up, let's start looking at the Sharp configuration. Now we're going to assume that we have a Sharp that has already had the software installed and has been physically set up in its correct location and is connected to the network. As previously mentioned, the Sharp cameras are running on Windows XP Embedded, which means you can connect to the camera using a remote desktop connection. Once you are connected to the Sharp, you will see that in your toolbar you have a camera icon, which is your plate reader server, and our standard icon for the watchdog. The watchdog is there to keep an eye on the plate reader server and will restart the application if it is not running. We'll be using version 4.0 for both Security Center and AutoView, and both the plate reader server and Security Center should be on the same software build. You can check the version of your plate reader server by right-clicking on the camera icon in the toolbar and choosing About, and you'll get this screen here. In Security Center, you can go to Help and click on About to see the version from the About screen here. If you need any assistance in upgrading the software on the Sharp or Security Center, you can always give the Genetec Technical Assistance Center a call. Now that we've connected to our fixed Sharp camera, we're going to check the options that need to be set up on the plate reader server in order for it to communicate with the Security Center. To get into our plate reader settings viewer, right-click on our plate reader icon in the toolbar and choose Settings. You can also run the file autoview.settingsviewer.exe from the d-autoview plate reader server folder. The first section we want to check is the plate reader options. Click on Plate Reader and you'll see we have two options, Config Scope and Extension. The config scope is the type of Sharp configuration we have. If you are using tire cameras in a mobile setup, you would choose the Sharp 1.5 overtime. But for our fixed environment, we need to make sure it's set to Sharp 1.5 hotlist, which is the most common setting. The extension determines how the information is being sent. If the Sharp is vehicle mounted, we use the mobile extension, and we can use the FTP if we are sending the information directly over the network via FTP. But in our case, we want to make sure the extension is set to Security Center. Okay, now if we expand our extensions folder under the plate reader section, we should have a folder for the Security Center options. The first thing, which is most important, is our discovery port. This is used by Security Center to find the Sharp units on the network. The discovery port on our Sharp has to match what we set up in Security Center, or they will not be able to see each other. If you're familiar with the auto-discovery of cameras and encoders using VSIP or discovery ports, this works in much the same way. By default, this is set to 5000, but we recommend changing it right away. In our example, we've set it to 5151. The second option is the WCF service port, which is used to communicate between the Sharp and the Security Center. We recommend leaving it at the default value of 8001, since the Security Center has been configured with this value as well. The next option is to accept a reboot command sent from the Security Center. We recommend having this option enabled, since getting out to the physically reboot the Sharp camera may not be very convenient. The last option that needs to be looked at is the HTTP server port. This is the port used to send the video feed to Omnicast. By default, it is set to port 80, but since that port is quite commonly used by other applications as well, we would recommend changing it to a different value. We don't have to change the other two remaining values in the Security Center extension. We can leave both of those unchecked. At this point, we don't have any other options to set in the plate reader settings viewer, so we just need to hit the Apply button to save the changes, and hit the OK button to close the window. Before the changes will take effect, we'll need to restart the plate reader server. An easy way of doing this is by right-clicking on your plate reader server icon in the toolbar and clicking on Exit. The watchdog will see that it's not running and will restart the application for you shortly. One thing to note is that if we have a firewall on the network, we need to make sure the ports that we have set up are specified here are unblocked. You'll really want to pay attention to what those ports are set to, as the Security Center will have to have those ports set to the same values in order to communicate with the Sharp cameras. If you want to verify that your plate reader server is working and reading plates, you can right-click on the plate reader icon in the toolbar and select Show Live Feed. You can choose the context camera to view the live feed, or you can choose the LPR camera to see the plate reads as well. Now don't forget to hide this before disconnecting, or it'll be using up CPU resources on the Sharp for no reason. Now that our Sharp has been configured, we can go to our Security Center and set up how we'll be communicating with the Sharp. The first thing we want to look at is the server admin. You'll need to make sure you have the auto view option enabled in the license and have the integration service installed. The main thing you'll want to check in the license under the auto view tab is the number of fixed Sharp units, and you'll also have to have the auto view LPR manager in there as well. If either of those is missing, or if you're interested in other options, please contact your regional sales manager and we can see about getting that set up for you. Please note that geocoding is not available in demo licenses. Now, after verifying the license, we'll need to move over to the Config tool and set up the LPR manager from the integration service. We can go into the network view so that we can see our integration service here, and click on Add an Entity, and we'll want to choose External System from the list. We'll want to select our integration service, and we're also going to want to choose our AutoView LPR manager from the type of external system. Hit Next, and we need to change our Discovery port and Listening port. The Discovery port is the same as what we had set up on the Sharp, and our listening port should be left at the default value of 8731 in most cases. Hit Next again, and you'll be able to name your LPR manager and choose the partition as well. Hit Next again, and you'll be on the Creation Summary page. And from here, you just hit Next. And if everything has been set up okay, you should see a confirmation that a new external system was created. And you can just hit the Finish button down here. Now you should see your LPR manager under your integration service. There's still a few things we want to set up, and if you try to go into one of the tabs, you'll see the warning that the root folder has not been set. This is needed for the LPR manager to function correctly, so it should be the first thing we take care of. Now I just want to take a quick second to point out that if the root folder has not been set, you won't see any information for your network card in the LPR manager properties. Don't panic, this section will be fine once we set up the root folder. So go in the Options tab of the LPR manager, and under the General Settings, you'll see the root folder box on the lower right here. Once you type in a name for the root folder and hit apply, it will create the subfolders it needs and set up the folder sharing structure. If the folder does not exist, it will create a new one with the appropriate subfolders. If the folder does exist, it will still create the subfolders for you. Now while we're in here, we're going to want to set up the matching option here, make sure it's turned on for fixed cameras. There's nothing really that we need to set up for this, but we need to have it enabled so that it matches the plates red to the hot list that have been selected. Now we can move over to the Database tab under the LPR Manager, where we need to set up where the reads and hits will be stored. The first thing to set up is the data server, which is the name of our database, and the database instance itself. Once that information has been entered and applied, you should see the status change from not connected to connected. If it does not say connected, check the name of the database you're trying to connect to, or the name of the server it is connecting to if not on the same machine. In the Database tab, we can also set up our database and disk space usage notifications, as well as our automatic backup frequency and how many generations to keep. This is very similar to the Directory and Access Manager database backup sections. Now, before moving on from our LPR Manager configuration, let's go back to our properties here, where you can see that we have the network card there now, and our discovery port has been set up according to what we set it to when we created the LPR Manager under the integration service. We're going to go back to the properties in a few minutes, but first we need to set up our hot lists in the Security Center. Hot lists are quite literally lists of hot or wanted vehicles. These lists of vehicles of interest are generated by cities, governments, and law enforcement agencies, and will typically include at least the category or reason the vehicle is wanted, the plate number, and the state or province the license has been issued from. The hot list files can be separated into specific reasons why the vehicle is wanted as well. Some of the reasons why a vehicle would be on a hot list would be if it was stolen, if the owner is a wanted felon, or if there's an Amber Alert out for that vehicle, or even if the vehicle contains a VIP. Hot lists can contain other information as well, such as the color and model of the vehicle, for example. If a plate that has been read matches one that is in a hot list, this is called a hit or a hot list hit. We can add multiple hot lists in the Security Center, so we can have separate lists for vehicles that are stolen, wanted, or whose owners are scofflaws, which basically means that they don't pay their tickets. The Security Center hot list configuration only needs to be done once per type of list, as it will monitor the list for new information and keep it up to date. We also support custom fields in the hot lists. If we take a look at the information flow here, we can see that the reads are coming in from any number of Sharp cameras that we have on the system. Once the information has been received in the Security Center, the data is checked against any hot lists we have set up to see if there are any matches. The read information is then sent to the Security Desk application, as well as any hot list hit notifications, which is right here. Users can also be notified if a hot list hit matches, a hot list hit notification can be sent to an email address as well. We can import lists that either use fixed field lengths or delimited using set characters. If we take a look at the quick example here, we can see the top list has been separated by commas, whereas the bottom list is length delimited, and each field has a fixed length. The top list would be a good example of a stolen vehicle list, and the bottom list would be for scofflaw, since we have the number of tickets and the value owed by the owner of the vehicle. Now this is just sample information, so the plates aren't real, but believe it or not, we've actually seen boot amounts that high before. So let's say that we received our hot list from our law enforcement agency. Let's take a look at how we would read those in the Security Center. The hot list can be found in the Config tool by going to the LPR Management and going to the Hot List section. We can create a new hot list from here. Just click on the Add Entity, choose Hot List, and then we can give it a name, a description if desired, and select a partition. Going into the properties of the hot list, there's a few things we can set up here. The priority is useful in cases where you have multiple hot lists, and you may have the same plate on more than one list. If a plate is found on more than one hot list when it is read, the hot list hiss displayed or notifications done will be in order of priority, where 0 is the highest priority. You can specify different colors for hot lists, so it's easier to see which hot list a hit belongs to. Now, when using wildcards, this is something that is set up on a per hot list basis. So if you choose to use wildcards, you must have a hot list file that is only used for this. All entities in the list must have at least one wildcard, which is represented by an asterisk. Each asterisk represents one character. You can have a maximum of 2 per plate number, which is the only field that accepts wildcards. When the hot list file is being imported, any plate number that has no wildcards or more than 2 wildcards will be ignored. The position of the wildcards is not as important as the order of the known characters. So, in the example here, all 3 of these plate searches with wildcards will find the same plates as long as they have 2 missing characters and have the letters S, K, and the numbers 3 and 7 in that order. It will not find the SUKA 357 plate because it has more mismatches than the number of wildcards we have specified. It will also not find the SKU 573 plate since the sequence of the characters do not match. The 2 plates below that, NSK 357 and ADSK 37, will be found on our list since the order of the known characters is correct, and as well each one has exactly 2 mismatched characters. Now back to our properties. The covert option is used to tell Security Center that any hits from this hot list are not to be displayed on the security desk. The users will see the read, but it will not come in as a hit. Only users with sufficient privileges are able to view covert hits in the security desk. Like the wildcard option, you should have a separate list for covert plates. Now, if you have the email notification option enabled in the LPR Manager, you can specify an email address to send hit notifications to. Once we get a hit, we can specify the sound file to play in the security desk application. You'll need to specify the full path in the sound file field. The next couple of fields are our most important ones and must be set up for the hot list to be usable. The first is our hot list path, which is where the Security Center will constantly be looking for the hot list file. You need to specify the full path and file name, which needs to be on a local or remote drive. The LPR Manager checks this file every 2 minutes and will update the hot list if it finds any new information. The Use Delimiters option is to specify if the information in the hot list file is separated by a character or set of characters, or if the fields we are using are set to fixed lengths. If the fixed length option is used, the field properties will need to be set up by editing the attributes below. You can check on an attribute and hit the pencil icon on the bottom to get the properties. Which is right down there. When using characters to delimit your file, don't forget to double check the character or string of characters used to separate the data in the hot list file. The attributes listed below are the fields of information present in the hotlist data file. There are 3 mandatory fields as previously mentioned: the category, the plate number, and the plate state. The order of the attributes can be changed by using the up and down arrows on the right side of the attribute list. If you're using delimiters, the order of the attributes must match the order of the fields in your file. So if we take a look at our example here, we need to move our plate number up 1 spot by hitting the attribute and then clicking on the arrow on the right. You can add other attributes by hitting the green plus sign on the bottom of the list and filling in all the details in the pop-up box that comes up. Now that we've set up our lists, we can tell the LPR manager to use these hot lists. So from the config tool, we need to go back to the network view, expand the integration service, and click on the AutoView LPR manager that we want to set up to monitor the hotlist we created. Under the Properties tab, you'll see a hotlist section. All the hotlists that have been created on the system will be listed here, and we just need to put a check mark next to the ones that we wish to have active. It will check the list and update the system with this information within a couple of minutes, and everything will be up to date. Please note that the formatting and information contained in the hotlist file is the responsibility of the client, but we'll be happy to help you out to make sure the information is imported. If you have any problems with the import and data processing, please give the Genetec Technical Assistance Center a call. So now that we have our system set up, let's take a look at some best practices for our AutoView and Security Center system. The first thing to mention with respect to the databases is the compatibility between the Security Center and SQL Server 2008, specifically for R2 or Release 2. Microsoft has released SQL Server 2008 R2 and is promoting it on their website, but there are some compatibility issues between SQL 2008 R2 and the Security Center 4.0 using the Patroller software. If you'll only be integrating fixed sharp cameras within your Security Center system, then you'll be fine. But if you have a mobile system integrated as well, we recommend using the previous version of SQL Server 2008. Now, as previously mentioned, we need to check that the firewall on the network is allowing information to be sent through the ports we have configured in the sharp cameras. These ports are the Discovery port, the WCF service port, which usually should be set to 8001, and the HTTP server port. Next, we need to take a look at the database requirements. One read takes up about 25 kilobytes in our database for a fixed system. If this is a mobile system, there is some additional information that will add to that value, which makes it a much more variable figure, and it's a little harder to determine. So you need to consider how many reads you are doing and what size of database you'll require. If you find you're running out of disk space, one thing you might want to take a look at are the retention periods set for the database information. This can be found in the config tool by going to the network view, expanding the integration service, clicking on our AutoView LPR manager, and from there, go to the Options tab on the right. This is under the General Settings category as well. So on the right side, above the root folder information that we had previously set up, we can see the retention periods for the hits, the reads, the events, and the Patroller route. You can lower these values to clear up more space in the database. Just make sure you have enough information in case an investigation is required. If you're using the Express version of SQL, you may need to upgrade to a full version of SQL in order to have a higher maximum size for your databases. Now, as previously mentioned, the versions of your Plate Reader server and Security Center should match up as well. This is important for the compatibility and stability of the system. So if your Plate Reader server is on version 4.0.3940.0, which is the SR1 or Service Release 1, then you should make sure that your Security Center software is on the same version as well. Let's make sure it's not on the 4.0.3845.0, which is the GA or General Availability release. With regards to the Sharp cameras, there's a few things we can do to help make the system function as well as possible. The first recommendation is that an adequate site survey is done before the purchase and installation of the Sharp cameras. This way we can evaluate if the camera is being set up in the best position to pick up as many plates as possible, and which type of lens and illumination would be most efficient in reading plates. We can also configure the Sharp cameras with automatic plate reading settings directly related to the geographic location of the Sharp. Since different states, provinces, and countries have different plate types, sizes, and colors, we have presets for almost any place you would need to use the Sharp cameras. If you happen to be setting them up in a location that will be reading plates from many different states, we would recommend leaving the configuration on the general settings, but otherwise we can change the regional optimization settings, which is called the config scope. To change the config scope, you can start a remote desktop connection to your Sharp and run the LPR settings viewer.exe file from the d-autoview plate reader server LPR folder. Click on the LPR folder from the root of the settings viewer, and you can choose the location of the plate to optimize for in the drop-down menu under config scope here. If you want to go back to using the general settings, just click on the blank entry here on the top of the list. If you make any changes here, you'll need to restart the application once you hit the apply and OK. Now that we have everything configured in the Security Center, Config Tool, and in the plate reader server on the Sharp camera, we can monitor events and generate reports in the security desk. So once we have the camera selected as entities in a monitoring task, the events will start coming in and populating the canvas tiles with any hits from the data received. And as well on top you can see the reads here, where we have a high resolution image of the plate. We have a snapshot from the context camera here, and as well the actual plate data that was read will be displayed here as well. The colors of the tiles relate to the type of hits that are being found here. We can also generate reports with the data being read. You can access these reports by clicking on the Security Center button on the top left here. And you go to Investigation, choose LPR, and select the report you want to view, such as a hit report or read report. The reports are pretty straightforward. You just need to select your time range and the entities you wish to include in the report, as well as any options you wish to have active. And then it will display any data that it has that matches the selected criteria here. Now, further documentation on the reports and other topics can be found in the Security Center User Guide, which is available on the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal, or GTAP, under the Documents subsection of the Tools section. Just choose Security Center 4.0 in the document finder on the left, and you'll find this document under the User Guide section. You can also access this information by hitting F1 while in the security desk and searching in the Help topics. Now, another useful guide that's available in the same section is the Administrator User Guide for 4.0 GA or SR1. This will have all the information you need on any of the LPR Manager options in the Security Center Config tool. This information is also available by hitting F1 while in the Config tool. If you need any help on the AutoView side of things with regards to the Sharp, just change the document finder over to AutoView and choose version 4.4. Some of the important documents in this section are the AutoView Hardware Administration Guide, and down here we have the Sharp Hardware Tutorials. Alright, now that we've covered our fixed Sharp system, I'd like to take a few minutes to go over some frequently asked questions. Question number 1, now that I have configured my Sharp and LPR manager, how do I add my camera to the Security Center? If the Sharp is on the same network as the Security Center, you won't have to. Provided that discovery ports match between the Sharp camera and the LPR manager, your camera will be automatically discovered and added to the Security Center. If the Sharp is on another network, you'll have to add it manually. Question number 2. I've just added my LPR manager, but I can't configure the network cards. What happened to them? And the answer, if there's no folder set up in the options of the LPR manager, you won't be able to select a network card yet. And the list will be blank. So this will be taken care of once the root folder has been defined. On to our third question. How many reads can my database hold? Now, this depends greatly on the type of SQL installed and the source of the reads. SQL Express has a 4 GB database limit for 2005 and 2008 Release 1, and a 10 GB limit for R2. If this is not enough, you may want to switch over to a full version of SQL. Also, fixed reads are about 25 kilobytes per read, whereas mobile reads take up more space because of GPS coordinates and other information. And finally, our fourth question. Why don't I see my reads and hotlist hits showing up in the security desk? We take a look at the answer here. The first thing to check is the plate reader server to make sure that it's reading plates properly. You can do this from the live view, just don't forget to hide it when you're done. Otherwise, it may be that the Sharp camera and hotlist entities have not been tracked in the Entities tab of the monitoring task. You'll need to have all hotlists and Sharps you want to have monitored in the entity list here. This concludes our GTAC Tech Talk webinar for today. If you have any further questions, we'll keep the session active for about another 10 minutes. If you have any questions about the webinar after the webinar has finished, or any other comments or suggestions, please feel free to post them on the GTAP forums. On behalf of myself and the Genetec Technical Assistance Center, I would like to thank you for attending and hope to see you at the next GTAC Tech Talk webinar.